Well, this study definitely has people talking. It's a new study that says men are smarter than women. 100,000 students were tested. The men had IQs nearly 4 points higher than women. And here to talk about the study is University of Phoenix psychologist Dr. Eric Fox. Good morning.
Good morning.
How valid is this study? How real is the comparison here?
Well, there's a couple things that make me question whether the results that we see in the study are even real. First of all, Rushton sits on the editorial board of the journal Intelligence, which means maybe the statistics weren't as scrutinized as they might have been if it had been an outside researcher. Additionally, might it be that the comparison groups between the men and the women that were compared in this study really aren't truly comparable? Might it be that more intelligent men are applying to college, or excuse me, might it be that less intelligent women are more likely to apply to college than less intelligent men? And it'd be a difference around brawn, because men have other options in order to make income superior to women. For example, construction workers make more than secretaries. So is it really a comparative sample?
Yeah, could this be brawn versus brains? I mean, there's some realities here about the differences in the physical makeup of men and women.
Certainly there are. We know that there are differences in, for example, men have more gray matter in their brains, which is a processing neuron. And women have more white matter in their brains, which is a connecting neuron. So this test, particularly the SAT, is really a test of processing, quick processing under a time constraint. So is that really what we're seeing, is a difference between one particular area that isn't necessarily representative of men being smarter?
Now listen to this one quote from the study. He claims that the glass ceiling phenomenon is probably due to inferior intelligence rather than discrimination or lack of opportunity.
He's been a pretty divisive kind of person and a provocateur at a minimum. He's made some very strong racial comments as well. Certainly, I think that we can demonstrate that when we practice something, our brains develop in a particular area. And is it feminine for girls to practice math and science? Typically not. And we know that if people practice a particular area, they'll excel in it or exceed in it. And what are we doing socially to children at particular ages that might influence them later?
Okay, so then when it comes right down to it, who is smarter, men or women, or does it just depend?
I think it depends on what you're measuring, and there's been really qualified psychologists on both sides of that argument for a long time. It's the conclusions that we make that I think are important. Men might excel in particular areas, and we know that women excel in others. And for example, facial recognition, women excel and do better than men, but we don't say women are smarter than men because of this one particular trait. Really, I think there's strengths in both, and it depends on how you're measuring and what you pull for.
And as far as IQ goes, has there been a study, if you just compare the actual IQ of a man and a woman in general terms, is there a study that says which one would have a higher IQ?
Well, his study does, and makes the conclusion that he makes. There are other studies that show that men have a few points higher than women, and others that show that women have higher points than men. But I defy anybody to be able to differentiate between somebody who has 103 IQ versus somebody who has 100, or somebody who has 133 versus somebody who has 130. The differences are very individualistic and not global.
Dr. Fox, very interesting. Good insight on that for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you stayed nice and in between, too. You're not going to make anybody mad.
Good.
That's pretty good.